welcome to Real Shame. It is a twice a week, sometimes more show where we talk about our list of movie blind spots, movies that we haven't seen that are popular or really well known that for some reason we've missed. My name is Andy.
And I'm Adam.
And today we are going to talk about a beloved chick flick, I guess is the best way to describe it. I hope that doesn't sound derogatory because I don't mean it like that. 1989's Steel Magnolias. But before we get into our review of Steel Magnolias, we always like to start off Monday's episode with talking about what we have been watching lately. So, Adam, what have you been watching lately?
I've been watching a couple things, but there's two things that I really want to call out, and it's actually a series. The first one was, unbeknownst to me before this, Kirby has never watched Timecop. So I introduced her to the 90s action movie Timecop with Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Awesome.
And that movie is still badass. It's still pretty cool. It still holds up. Some of the CGI, like with them time warping, they have that ripple effect, doesn't really hold up as well, but it's still an awesome movie. It's great. And she loved it. And then I made her watch the sequel. Did you know that Timecop had a sequel?
I was not aware that there was a Timecop 2.
Yeah, I was working at the video store, and I remember Timecop 2, The Berlin Decision, sitting on the shelves.
The Berlin Decision.
And it stars Jason Scott Lee, the guy who played Bruce Lee in the Dragon, the Bruce Lee story.
Right, okay.
And I like Dragon Bruce Lee story. I like Jason Scott Lee. So I watched it many times. I remember it very fondly. And it's not as good as I remember. It kind of suffers a little bit like we saw with Hollow Man, a little bit where it's very much of its age, like it's an early 2000s movie. So it has that rock soundtrack.
I was going to say, does he listen to like new metal? And,
yes.
Okay.
It's just, that stuff kind of takes away from it. And like the bad guy has like this bleached blonde, like, remember like in that time people had like those short Caesar cuts and they bleached it?
Slim Shady.
Yeah, Slim Shady kind of stuff. It was fun to watch. It's not as enthralling as Timecop, and it's not as good as I remember, but I still have fondness for those movies. So we watched Timecop and Timecop 2. What about you? And if there's a third one, we would have watched the third one.
Well, I have seen Timecop, although it has been a while, and I really like Timecop. From what I remember, I haven't seen it, like I said, in a long time. And I think even the bad Jean-Claude Van Damme films from like that era from the 90s, I still, because of nostalgia, I kind of elevate them more than I probably should. And I need to get on Timecop 2, the Berlin Decision.
It's awesome. I'll get you a copy of it.
At least once.
And my thing is, like, we should talk more about Jean-Claude Van Damme later, because I think like some of his later movies, like after the one he did with Dennis Rodman and all that stuff, were just I remember they're kind of unwatchable.
Yeah.
But
yeah, he definitely hit a decline, just like Steven Seagal.
Yeah.
So and the crap they put out nowadays is
just not good.
Bottom of the barrel.
Although JCVD is supposed to be really good. I don't remember it that well, but I remember it being very well received.
Yeah, I haven't seen JCVD yet. I have watched. So before I get into the movies that I've watched, which is all basically one series. Yeah. I did start watching the Creepshow TV series.
Okay, is this like a new series?
Yeah, came out I think last year, and it was originally on the Shudder network, SHUDDER. It's all an all horror television network, which I don't get Shudder because you have to pay to subscribe or whatever. But now they're putting the episodes on AMC because I guess it's a. Maybe the executive producer is Greg Nicotero, The Walking Dead. Yeah. So, obviously he has an affiliation with AMC from Walking Dead. So they're doing Creepshow. They're airing them now on AMC. It's okay. I'm not a big fan of the original Creepshow movie. I think it's just okay. Some segments are better than others. I actually like Creepshow 2 better than Creepshow, which is blasphemy to most people. But I kind of like the stories in Creepshow 2. The movie better. I like the raft story where the little ooze is like floating around trying to kill the swimmers. The TV series, I will say this, you and I have watched a little bit of the new Twilight Zone reboot, which I think is terrible. The Twilight Zone, the original Twilight Zone is my favorite television series of all time. So I think I have a kind of a high bar that's set for that. But I don't like the new Twilight Zone.
They're boring.
Jordan Peele, it's just not good. I will say the Creepshow series I already like better than the Twilight Zone series. Well, because the Creepshow, they don't necessarily rely on any kind of twist.
Yeah.
They're just kind of more just, oh, it's a horror. It's more like Tales from the Crypt. Sometimes they have twists, sometimes they don't. Some of the episodes, though, that I've seen so far, I felt like the ending should be like cut and dried. It should be this way. Like that made the most sense, and they went a completely different direction with it, which I thought sucked. And I don't think it was necessarily because they're like, oh, everybody's going to think we're going to go this way, and we're going to go this way to subvert expectations. Maybe they did do that, but to subvert expectations, they made it crappy.
Yeah.
But some of the stories are actually decent. And then the movies that I've watched, we in my household have started watching all of the Bond movies from the beginning. Now, I have seen every single Bond movie at least once, except I have actually not seen Spectre, the most recent one.
Yeah.
Of course, No Time to Die was supposed to come out around this time, but they've pushed it back and whatnot because of COVID-19. So thought it would be a good time to kind of brush up on all the Bonds, see the ones that I've only seen one time, more, again. So started with Dr. No. Am I what?
I was going to ask, because there was like a Casino Royale where they called him Jimmy Bond instead of James Bond. That's kind of loosely.
Yeah, that's more of like a parody.
Yeah, did you
movie.
watch that? I didn't
watch that, although I might watch it. And also I didn't watch Never Say Never Again because that's not an official canon Bond.
Is that the one where they got Sean Connery to come back?
Yes, in the early '80s. It's a remake of Thunderball.
Okay.
It's got him and Kim Basinger, and it was not an official Bond. It's not part of the, because I have like the Bond box set that has all the movies up to I think Skyfall at that point is when I got it. Never Say Never Again is not included in that, so I've skipped that one. Not that I wouldn't watch it, and I have seen it before, but I honestly don't have a copy of it. Yeah. So that's one reason why I didn't watch it. But so far, started with Dr. No, and am up to just finished The Man with the Golden Gun.
Okay.
So I'm kind of in the middle of the, maybe not the middle, but into the Roger Moore James Bond movies.
I think I've seen Dr. No of the Sean Connery era, and that's it.
Oh, wow.
Is that the one with the alligator crocodile in the pool?
That is, well, it depends. I think there's more than one that has those.
I just remember him like trying to swim by one. Maybe it was a shark.
Yeah, there's a few with sharks as well. So yeah, they tend to reuse some of the same, like, oh, let's feed him to the sharks or whatever.
I like the James Bond movies, and I like the conceit, and I like everything about them. But I always have like intentions to go back and watch them. But I just never have, and I know
you've seen the Pierce Brosnan ones.
So yeah, my first James Bond movie was the Pierce Brosnan era. Was Goldeneye, which is
right?
One of the best Bond movies in my opinion.
Well, you haven't seen that many. So.
Yeah, sure. So I've watched pretty much all of them since then. I remember being really excited to see Goldeneye and catching it in the theaters and thinking it was awesome. And then
I had a friend that was
disappointed,
really into the James Bond movies, and I wasn't really as a kid.
Yeah.
They used to show a lot of the Roger Moore ones on TV when I was a kid, and I always thought they were kind of stupid. Yeah. And then I remember he and I were actually roommates at the time when GoldenEye came out, and he's like, "Oh, Pierce Brosnan's now the new James Bond. I want to see GoldenEye." He was really excited about it. I think he went to the theater to see it. I skipped it because I was like, Bond is stupid." And then he rented it when it came out on, at that time, VHS, I think. And we watched it, and I still thought it was really, really, really stupid. Yeah. It took me a while to kind of turn my brain off and get into the James Bond movies because they're ridiculous and completely unbelievable. I mean, the opening stunt in GoldenEye, I still remember fondly because I was like, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen.
I remember it from the movie, but I also remember playing it so many times in the game.
God, the Nintendo 64 GoldenEye game is a stone cold classic. I love that. But anyway, so kind of working my way through the Bond films and, going to go from Roger Moore on into Timothy Dalton and of course I did. There's Sean Connery and then there's George Lazenby. Just did the one.
Yeah, just did the one.
And then Roger Moore is kind of where I'm at right now. So that's what I've been watching.
So when you're done, we'll have to circle back and see which ones are. You'll have to not rank every one, but kind of.
And it's interesting because I did have kind of a ranked list, and that's already started to kind of shift having watched these again. The other thing I was going to say was, and I know we're kind of spending a lot of time here, but I'll wrap it up. The other thing I was going to say is the only other time I've seen a lot of these other Bond movies I saw on VHS, and now I'm seeing them in 1080p, and it looks great. Like it's really, really cool to see it look that good. So that's nice. Anyway.
All right, so that's what we've been watching, and now we're going to jump into our review of Steel Magnolias.
Relax. You can't screw up her hair. You just tease it and make it look like a brown football helmet. Well, I must have missed the passage in Emily Post that said all abuse is heaped on the mother of the bride.
Oh, hush, girls. Shelby, your mama never tells us much. What's Jackson like?
He's really cute. And I thought he was a pest at first, but then he kind of grew on me, and now I love him.
You made a very good catch, Shelby. Louisiana lawyers do well, whether they want to or not.
No, I don't really care.
Steel Magnolias came out in 1989. It's directed by Herbert Ross, and it's written by Robert Harling. Harling, I think? Probably.
Harling, yeah.
And I think it's based off his play of the same name. So Steel Magnolias is basically, like Andy said, it's a chick flick. not to be derogative, but it's basically... I thought it was a comedy. It turns out it's not a comedy.
It's more of a dramedy.
Dramedy, yeah. And it follows a group of women in this small Louisiana town over a few years. It has Sally Field in it. It has Julia Roberts in it. One of Julia Roberts' first roles. Has Daryl Hannah in it, Dolly Parton, and Shirley MacLaine, amongst other people. So this is a movie that Andy hasn't seen. I thought I saw it, but when I watched it again, I realized maybe I didn't see the...
You're like, where's the comedy?
Yeah.
What's happening?
So the funny story is, for these two movies that we're pairing up, Steel Magnolias and Mystic Pizza, I turned to Kirby and I go, these are comedies, right? And she's like, oh no, they're not comedies.
Strap in.
So don't be like me. So Andy, you haven't seen Steel Magnolias. What'd you know about the movie before you saw it, and what'd you think of it after seeing it?
Oh, this is a tough one. I don't know if I'm going to draw the ire of people that love this movie out there, but I didn't like it that much. I knew that it was a stage play.
Yeah.
I knew that going in, and I knew that who was in the cast or whatnot, and I knew that there was some tragedy involved in the movie. I actually did not know that. And we're going to spoil it.
Yeah, spoilers.
Movies over 30 years old. I did not know which character died. I didn't know that Julia Roberts was going to die. But I would hear people sometimes say, "Oh, Shelby," whatever, referring to that movie. So once the movie started going and I saw that Julia Roberts was Shelby, I was like, something bad's going to happen to her. But I kind of wish I didn't know that it was a play going into it, because I think that was kind of, well, there's a few things that
colored the way you saw it.
That colored the way that I saw it. There's a few things, but that was one of them. I felt like plays are plays and plays are plays and movies are movies. And I know plays get adapted into films, but that's not always successful, because I feel like when you're watching a play, you expect a lot of soliloquies and monologues and flowery dialogue that doesn't necessarily sound like real life, but in a play that's okay, that's kind of the setting, the stage or whatever. I felt like some of the dialogue in this film suffered because it sounded too stagey, like it sounded too Broadway or off Broadway or whatever you want to call it.
Like your suspension of disbelief is different for a play versus a film.
I think so. I mean, I've never gone to see a play, or for that matter, acted in a play and felt like it was anything remotely like a movie. I mean, I always felt kind of some distinction there. I mean, there's some playwrights that do kind of successfully, and I'm not saying he didn't successfully translate like David Mamet. Exactly. That's the first person that I thought of. You have movies like Glengarry Glen Ross, which is, kind of a little, maybe a modern classic, arguably. But I feel like it translates better to the screen than this movie did, for me anyway. For me, I know obviously this is a beloved film for a lot of people, but and it's not to say that I didn't like some of the dialogue, because I actually wrote down some lines that I really, really dug and thought were funny. But that's not the biggest problem that I had with the movie. It goes through, as you said, a period of several years, and you have to follow several different women. I didn't feel like I got to know any of these women enough to have that emotional payoff that happens when Shelby dies. So when Shelby dies in the movie, I felt bad. I mean, I was, that's terrible. But I didn't get emotional over it. I didn't have much of an emotional response to it. I just was like, I mean, it left me unmoved, and I feel like, again, it kind of hurt the film. It had too much on its plate, if that makes sense.
So, I agree with you, because I think it's kind of like, it's a couple things. Like, you have a lot of characters you're trying to keep in your head. You have, like, I think it's like, 5 or 6 women that you're trying to keep conscious of. and it's really just in there for a second, then kind of jumps forward
now
6 months.
Now it's Christmas. Now it's Easter. Now it's whatever. And again, that probably worked a lot better as a play. The lights go down. The lights come back up. Also, one thing I read about the play, which I did not know, is that the entire thing takes place in Truvy's beauty shop.
Oh, that's cool.
The play does. And there are no men in the play at all.
Yeah,
so
that's what I read too.
the only thing that you get from the play is the women talking about what has happened. And talking about, oh, well, now Shelby's passed away or whatever. You know, you don't actually see any of that stuff happen. But obviously, when they brought it to the screen, that would probably make for kind of a boring movie, I would think, just all set in one location.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because, like, the biggest criticism that's usually put against movies that are adapted from stage plays is that they're not cinematic.
Right.
And the fact is that, you know, you can't have... You know, you don't have a camera when you're doing a play, so you can't have moving shots. You can't have dolly in. You can't have a lot of action.
Right.
So, like, you know, like I remember when Fences came out, a lot of people were like, it just felt like there was no dynamicism to the movie. Which
I saw Fences. Yeah.
I didn't see it, but that's what I heard. So yeah. So that's what you kind of run into with it, with adapting, and it's interesting because I've never really thought about the dialogue and how that could be. You know, you kind of your expectations are slightly different between being in a theater house versus being at home or being in the movie theater. That's cool.
Right. And on top of that, I mean, as far as these characters went, some of the characters I just flat out didn't care for. Like, I didn't care about the Daryl Hannah character one bit.
Daryl Hannah's could have been completely cut from the movie.
Yeah, Daryl Hannah and her goofy Kevin J. O'Connor plays her goofy boyfriend.
Yeah.
I always think of him as the goofy dude from Deep Rising. If you ever saw that movie,
I think of him as a bad guy from The Mummy. Brendan Fraser's Mummy.
that too. But I didn't care about their story at all.
No, they could have been excised from the movie completely, and they should have probably been.
And then I realized the play didn't have men in it. But of course, they include men in the movie, like Tom Skerritt, and they have names like Drum and Spud, which is, I guess that's how they named their children down in Louisiana. But those guys, and again, this is a movie about women, and you know I understand that's the focus. But those guys, honestly, you probably could have tossed those guys too because they really didn't do much. Yeah. Like I wanted to see more of the Dolly Parton, Sam Shepard story, and probably because I like Dolly Parton a lot. Yeah. She's just naturally kind of a sweet old lady, you know, just good old lady, whatever. And I like Sam Shepard too, and he just has nothing to do in this movie. Yeah. Neither does Tom Skerritt for that matter, or whatever.
But the one scene I remember, and the reason why I thought it was a comedy, is all the Tom Skerritt stuff. So him trying to get rid of the birds in the trees, and then they shoot the firework at the trees. Like, I remember that so vividly and thinking that's so funny, and I thought this whole movie was going to be.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But I agree. I think they could have excised some of the characters and given us more time. Because for me, my biggest issue with the movie is the abruptness of the season changes. And I think it's hilarious how, like, the camera's panning in Trudy's, and all of a sudden you see, like, a carved pumpkin on the wall, or you see, like, 4th of July or a July calendar, like, okay, we know where we are. Like, it's one of those filmmaking things that
it really slaps you in the face with where we're at in time.
Yeah, it's a very hard, like, line to do because you don't want to, like, tell the audience, you want to show them, but then again, having, like, decorations or being like, oh, you having your wedding on Halloween kind of stuff is like, okay, well, you know, it's a little on the nose. But yeah, those time changes were so abrupt. I wish they kind of either removed some, because it felt like a lot of time too that there wasn't a lot of character change in some of those. Like I was thinking, like when we saw them at the fair, it was just kind of like it felt same. It felt like nothing new was really happening. It just felt like the prior time we saw these people.
Some of the cuts at the fair were jarring to me. I was like, wasn't she just over there? And now she's... I mean, I understood what was happening, but I still thought it was edited in a bizarre way, sort of. I don't say this much about movies, but I felt like this movie, it would have helped for it to be longer. Because I felt like I would have gotten to know the characters more, and maybe, you know, and then you wouldn't have the abrupt changes maybe in the seasons or whatever. You spend more time at Easter, you spend more time at Christmas, whatever. If this movie is 2.5 hours maybe, then I'm going to get really emotional maybe when Shelby dies. But at this point, it did not earn the emotional payoff that I think that it wanted. Honestly.
And you don't really get anything of Shelby, like it's more about Sally. Sally Fields. than it is about Julia Roberts.
And Sally Field is great as always. I mean, I didn't think any of these women necessarily gave poor performances.
Yeah.
Maybe Daryl Hannah's not as good, not up to snuff.
Her
with
mousy
the rest.
thing is so weird. And then the Kirby pointed this out. Sorry to interrupt, but she goes mousy to not mousy back to mousy again, and it doesn't explain like why she did that or what happened.
They say that she, and it's very quick, but they say that she became a wild woman and started smoking and drinking. And then she found God and went back to church, so she put the glasses back on or whatever. And Daryl Hannah's an attractive lady. You can put ugly-looking granny glasses on her. She's still attractive.
Yeah.
Like, when I saw her at the beginning of the movie, I was like, okay, I guess they're trying to make her ugly, but she's not ugly. Like, that's not...
And the one thing I kept on asking Kirby during the movie, and same with Mystic Pizza afterwards, is like, is this what weddings look like in the 80s? Like, was this cool? Was this chic?
Yeah.
What were her colors like? Blush and like rose or something like that.
She says it about 20 times in the movie. They're blush and bashful, I think.
Blush and bashful.
I wrote it down somewhere.
2 shades of pink.
2 shades. Her colors are pink and pink. But so back to that again.
Yeah.
I did like some of the dialogue, and I wanted to read off a few. I also like the armadillo cake. I thought the armadillo cake was funny.
Hilarious. That was the only time I laughed. Well, that and the firecrackers were the 2 times I laughed during the movie.
My favorite characters in the film, and I'm probably not alone in this, are Ouiser and Clairee, and they're the 2 oldest women, Shirley MacLaine and Olympia Dukakis, because to me they're like the female Statler and Waldorf from the Muppets. Like, all they do is just like make fun of stuff and say crass things or whatever. Particularly Shirley MacLaine.
I feel
and
a little bit
dog
sorry
that jerks
for
her around.
Ouiser a bit, just because like at the end where she's like, just slap Ouiser. It's like,
now's your chance. So
poor Ouiser.
That actually was my. We had a viewer ask a question about what was your favorite, because she was aware that we were watching this movie. What's your favorite scene in the movie? The funeral, or after the funeral, I guess.
Sally Field.
That's my favorite scene, and I feel like that does have, it does kind of hit you here, even if it didn't hit me as hard as maybe it does some people. But when she says, I could jog all the way to Texas and back, but my daughter can't. And the whole like, oh, you should hit Ouiser, now's your chance or whatever. I thought that was funny. On a personal note, I actually knew a lady that her daughter died when she was in her early 20s. So of course I'm thinking about that while I'm watching it too. And I mean, and again, it made me feel terrible. It made me feel bad. I remember having conversations with the lady after her daughter had passed away. Her daughter had her whole life, ahead of her. And, she said what any parent would say, no parent, should outlive their own child, So thinking about that when I was watching the movie, I mean, I felt terrible. I felt bad, but this movie just did not have the emotional weight that I felt like it should have.
And I think they should have spent more time explaining why Julia Roberts wanted a kid. Like, she says that she wants a kid, but she just tells you what it is. Like, you don't really get the feeling or the yearning for her wanting to have a kid, because you only get such little time with her.
I'm going to get some hate mail for this, but everybody told her not to do that. Everybody told her, don't have a child. And she's like, no, yeah, I could adopt, but no, I'm going to have a kid. And that ultimately is kind of what kills her. And I understand.
And she tries to adopt a kid in the movie.
I understand.
She talks about that.
But doesn't she say no judge is going to give adoption papers to somebody with my medical condition?
Yeah.
Why not? Is something wrong with Dylan McDermott, your husband? Like, I didn't get... I mean, I've never tried to adopt a child, but do they really go, you're a type 1 diabetic, I'm not going to let you have a child? Yeah. Like, I just found that far-fetched. I did read the Robert Harling, Herbert Ross's guy directed, Robert Harling, that wrote the play. It is based on his actual sister's death, and what happened to her in real life mirrors closely what happened to Julia Roberts. She was a type 1 diabetic. She did need dialysis. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, she did need a kidney transplant, and ultimately that kidney transplant failed her. And so he wrote the play to deal with his grief. So it's not like the movie's far-fetched. Yeah. But I was like, Julia, because her mom's like pissed at her. It seems like the whole movie, like, you're not doing what I told you to do.
And then the next scene, it's the kid's first birthday or whatever, and her mom's all happy-go-lucky, like nothing ever happened. Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, I mean, it takes place in Louisiana. We were trying to remember how to pronounce the Shinquapin. I don't know. They say it once or twice in the movie.
If you know how to pronounce the name of the town.
But it was actually filmed. Yeah, if you know how to pronounce it, let us know. Let us know. It was actually filmed. It was filmed in Louisiana, which it takes place in Louisiana, but it was filmed and everybody says this wrong. It's spelled like Natchitoches, but it's Natchitoches. That's where it was filmed. It's Natchitoches.
Not Nacogdoches?
Well, apparently that was Robert Harling's home. Not Nacogdoches. That was Robert Harling's hometown. So that's why it was filmed there, kind of to give it that authenticity.
Yeah. So, I like the movie. I thought it was good. Like, I thought it wasn't what I was expecting to watch because obviously I thought it was a comedy. So I was expecting to laugh. And I thought it was more going to be like the Family Stone, where it's just like, this family coming together and you kind of have this comedy and dramedy moments. But it was a little bit more serious than I want. But I thought it was good. Like, I'd watch it again. I don't think it's the end all be all, but I enjoyed it.
I mean, it sounds like I hated it or something, which is far from the truth. I didn't hate it. Ultimately, I think I just was more disappointed. And it's impossible not to have expectations, I feel like, for a movie like this, because I know that it is a beloved, kind of, again, chick flick kind of thing. And so I was like, and I wanted to say something about chick flicks. That sounds so derogatory, I feel like, but I think, you label these films, oh, this is like a guy movie, or this is a chick flick, or this is, whatever. Ultimately, watch whatever you want to watch. I mean, I think people think, I'm a guy, so I can't watch a chick flick. That's, I'm not as masculine or something like that, which I think is silly. I say watch foreign films, or don't, watch whatever you want to watch. But I feel like plenty of chick flicks, and I've seen far worse chick flicks than this.
Yeah.
But I don't know, that this one is like in the upper pantheon, I feel like, of chick flicks, and I just didn't quite reach that high for me. It has good and bad. I want to see a spinoff with just Shirley MacLaine and Olympia Dukakis.
Kind of like Grumpy Old Men, but Grumpy Old Ladies.
Yes. You have actually, there's a connection to Grumpy Old Man with the Mystic Pizza. You have the handwriting of a serial killer, like lines like that, or when Olympia Dukakis says, "If you don't have anything nice to say about anybody, come sit by me," or whatever like that. All that stuff I thought was pretty funny. I like those lines. And then Dolly Parton has a line where she says, "He's so confused he don't know whether to scratch his watch or wind his butt," which I thought, well, gosh darn it, that's a good line. But
bless her heart. We're gonna have to use that.
Bless her heart.
Yeah. So, did you find the ratings on IMDb and all that kind of stuff?
I did.
Because that's all I have to say about the movie. Is there anything you?
Yeah, they tried to make this into like a TV series. They had a TV pilot in 1990, which didn't get off the ground, never went anywhere. It was remade as a Lifetime movie in 2012 with an all African American cast playing the lead roles. One thing I did write down here, I like the musical score of this. I don't know if you really paid much attention to it, but I think the reason why that seems to be a theme with you, a theme, get it? No. No, I think the reason why I noticed it is because it reminded me of another movie that I like a hell of a lot, and that's Joe versus the Volcano. And it turns out it's the same composer, Georges Delerue, French guy. But yeah, it sounds kind of, a lot of composers' music sounds maybe similar. I think Danny Elfman's music sounds similar, but not necessarily in a bad way. But you can kind of tell from the instrumentation or whatever the composition that that sounds like something John Williams wrote, or that sounds some. And anyway, that's kind of, I was like, this sounds like a score maybe that I've kind of heard before, or at least similar to, and it's because it's the same guy. Rotten Tomatoes, it is 68% fresh critic score and 89% audience score. So, and actually, because I was like, am I missing something? I kind of looked through the Rotten Tomatoes critics' reviews of the ones some that gave it favorable and some that gave it unfavorable, to get like a cross section of what they kind of said. And I think a lot of people kind of echoed the ones that gave it negative reviews said, and even some of the ones that gave it positive reviews said, this doesn't earn, kind of the emotion that it wants to get out of it. But it's still a fine ensemble drama. Yeah. And I'm like, that's a pretty good assessment. But ultimately, I would not. I don't know that I would recommend this to somebody.
Interesting. Based on what you said and what I've read, I'm actually kind of curious to see the stage play. So if the stage play ever comes through town, I might actually try to watch that, because I think that's pretty curious. And I'd be interested to see how it was written for the stage.
Yep. Yeah, same here.
I was going to say something else, but it just left my head, so it wasn't that important, guys. All right, guys, so that was our review on Steel Magnolias. If you feel strongly about Steel Magnolias and feel that we didn't do it justice, shoot us an email at realshame@gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram, and stay tuned, subscribe and like and all that kind of stuff, because next time we're following it up with another chick flick, or what do you want to call it? And that's going to be
Mystic Pizza.
Mystic Pizza. Sounds good. Yeah, is good. Looks good too. So stay tuned, guys, and we'll review Mystic Pizza next, guys. We'll talk to you later.